Rocky.
Check it out.
Bags of homeschool.
New t-shirts.
New t-shirts.
We got the makeshift homeschool t-shirts.
Wait, what size is mine again?
She has a
Super-
4X large.
super
the
duper
largest
large.
size there was.
Super duper large. I want to move this a little bit closer.
Larger than that.
So should we do a simultaneous sip? Can you guys move in closer? This is too far away. Move in nice and close. All right, join me. Grab your chalice, your mug. Oh, delicioso.
That pressed on my wiggly tooth.
Oh yeah?
Yep.
Oh boy. So today is an interesting topic, and I'm gonna let the kids talk about it more because it's really about them. So take it away, kiddos.
Well, when I was like 7, was I 7? Or like, was it 9?
I think you were 8.
Okay, I was 8. And
I was
Um, my dad gave me an article by Paul Graham called Lies We Tell Kids, and he told me to read it and write an article about it. So, and it was really interesting to me because I knew that it probably wasn't normal. Like, usually a parent wouldn't just hand their child like an article called Lies We Tell Kids. But so I was reading through it, and when I was I asked my dad and my mom whether or not Santa or the Tooth Fairy was actually real. And so, like, pretty early on, so I kind of knew that those things weren't real before a lot of my friends did.
You actually
Well,
asked for experiment.
So you asked me, and then I didn't tell you no.
Mhm.
I said, well, do you want to believe in Santa Claus? Do you
Yeah.
like believing in Santa Claus?
Uh-huh.
And you're like, I just want to know.
Yeah.
Well, we actually did an experiment. You said none of us should put money under your pillow when you
Yeah,
lost
when
a
I was
kid.
Running an experiment.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. But
That's one type. There were a lot of different things in that article
mhm.
that kind of made my eyes open.
Yeah, I read through my article this morning just because I wrote it a long time ago, but that is linked in the description in case anybody's interested.
So one of the big examples in the original Paul Graham article that made me kind of perk up and change some of my own parenting behavior was not it's not so much the direct lies, but like the idea that and that's a very provocative title. It's one of the reasons why I like the article so much is that
Yeah.
it's like, whoa, like grabs your attention, right? But so let's say that there's a kid in a store and he says, oh, I want this toy, right? Then, you know, how do you typically see a parent reacting? It's a public situation, happens all the time. Like, one common strategy is that the kid will just keep asking for it and the parent will keep saying no, 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 until the parent finally gives in and says yes. Right. But how often do you see the parent sit down and explain the exact truth? Like, one is like, oh, we can't afford it. You'll hear that too. But that's like almost never true, right? I mean, these toys are like cost almost nothing. Mm-hmm. So that's not so much it. So then it kind of gets to this question of why. There's like, we were talking about why before. And I think sometimes we don't even think through ourselves, like why we say no
Right.
to young people. But when we understand why we're making the decision and then we explain it to them as transparently as we possibly can to our own kids, we're trusting them.
Yep. To make a good decision based on the information we can give to them.
So, like,
Also, if like your store example, then if the parent just keeps saying no and then the kid keeps bugging them until they finally say yes, then the kid learns that the way to get things that they want is to just keep like pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until someone finally gives in, which is usually not the best way
Right.
you want to go.
yeah.
Yeah, this makes me think of, the kind of the art of persuasion or marketing.
Oh, it is
You-
like that.
You really want to just provide as much information as possible for the other party to get to the conclusion you want.
Yeah.
It's
So, yeah, there's this level of I think another term for it would be like radical transparency.
it's also the trust. You trust your kids
Yeah.
with the information to make a good decision, and you give them opportunity to make good decisions.
That's true, but I want to go beyond what I think most parents, if they're watching this, would be nodding their head and just being like, yeah, but like this to take it to a real extreme, right? So like there was for Father's Day.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell? That's a good one.
For Father's Day, my dad said, instead of like giving me a bunch of presents and stuff, I want you guys to go somewhere and write out a list of things that I'm like my weaknesses and things that you guys don't really like that I keep doing.
Things that I repeatedly do, that if I learned how to not do those things, your life would be way better.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really funny because when I mentioned this, the kids were like, "Really, Daddy?" And my wife was like, "Oh boy, this is gonna be fun."
Yeah. But
That was great.
yeah.
Oh boy, this is good.
She was all excited. So it was like, and this relates to this idea, like one of the lies I think that parents do on accident is that instead of sitting down and explaining the complex realities of what's going on, especially when it comes to asking them not to do certain things, that happens a lot. Like, don't do that, don't do this, right? Is to be radically transparent about how wrong parents can be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, to just be so blunt about the fact that we don't know what we're doing for sure. We put a lot of thought into it. Here's the decision we're making. We could be wrong. Here are some of the concerns that we have about it. So it's like we're giving them all this back. We'll talk in front of the kids about some of the decisions that we're making about them. Right? So that they see the nuance. They see the complexity.
Yeah, like before I homeschooled.
Yeah,
Like,
that was...
we were like, instead of just you and mommy talking by yourselves, we were just all into the
Yeah, you were
discussion,
part of the conversation.
including Isla. So it's kind of
And now I'm homeschooling, sort of.
Sort of. It's like a quasi
It's like
homeschooling. So they wrote out this list, and one of them was like when the kids screw up, that I would just come down on them really hard for a long period of time. That was the second one on the list, so we called it Daddy doing a number 2 on the family. But and they were a little bit nervous about telling me. But
we were all worried.
you guys were really worried. But that was part of that honesty about like, look, we're all very deeply flawed in our own special way, as opposed to like this fairly typical kind of parent-kid relationship where the parent kind of sits up on this pedestal, hides a lot of their flaws because they're worried that if the kid sees chinks in the armor, that the kid's just going to take advantage of them. But if you see that if you see that I'm willing to do that, then all of a sudden you become willing to do that. So you guys do that. I think that's one of the things about you kids that, to me, is like so powerful as an example to me, is how open you guys are to feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like yesterday I was just like, Isla, we need to do this with your teacher, send this email, such and such. I asked you to do it, you hadn't done it before, but we have to do this because remote learning is challenging enough. And she was just like, yes, sir. And just like wrote it up on the board. And I was just like, yes. What's another good example? We're a little nervous talking about this topic.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
the hesitation.
Like, yeah.
I'm happy to, maybe if people ask questions about like, what is it? Another way of saying it is like, how do you talk to kids with a level of radical transparency?
Yeah, because then it like, I think if parents are like willing to say, like talk about like how, like they're like how they're just so honest with their kids that they're willing to say like we don't always know best, but
Oh
like,
yeah, that's a tough one. If you have a rule and you're like, it could be a wrong rule.
right, yeah. Yeah.
Well, also I think, I remember when you were babies learning what is dangerous, what is not. That is I think it depends on the kid's age too. I think for you girls, starting 8, maybe even a little younger, we treat you like an adult.
I want to pull up the Paul Graham examples while you guys keep
Okay,
chatting.
yeah. And so if like
With a baby toddler, we know if the toddler's touching the stove, it's dangerous.
yeah,
Right.
and also it's like it's really hard to say like we don't always know what's the best thing to do, because then you're afraid that then they'll just like
Not
Well, if
listen.
you don't
question
know,
everything, then why should I listen to you? But it's also just that
You want to explain why you should listen to these rules because you might hurt, and why it would be good. But
Wait, what's Santa Claus?
huh?
Wait, what's Santa Claus? That was Flutter Boy.
But I also think that if you just can explain that, well, we're not always right, but since we've like lived longer, then we do have more experience, so you can tell us if something doesn't make sense, and then if like we still think that it's a good decision, then we'll just explain to you why. And then it's more of a discussion than kind of like a parent talking down to their kid, like, no, that's wrong, this is right.
All right, so I got this quote from Paul Graham, so to give people a flavor of this article. So he writes, one of the most remarkable things about the way we lie to kids is how broad the conspiracy is. All adults know what their culture lies to kids about. They're the questions you ask your parents. If a kid asked who won the World Series in 1982 or what the atomic weight of carbon was, you would simply tell them. But if a kid asks you, is there a God? Then oh no, you don't say anything about that because it's too controversial, right? So that would be one example. So, like,
Yeah.
One way, so that's a good one. Like, how do you approach that, right? So if your kid asks you, because there was a period where Sume got really into Greek gods, and she was like asking me all these questions about it. And so, that was like an opportunity where, I could go a few different routes with that, right? One way would be, all right, this is my chance to, make Sume into a scientist and like, tell her, well, there is no God, and like, I don't know.
I knew it was
I don't actually
mythical.
think that.
I knew it was mythical.
I
just
kind of,
liked the
it's
Percy
complicated, like, but like this was an opportunity for me to be radically transparent about how there's some things that I don't know, right? And to basically say like, well, here's the thing: there are some questions that are unanswerable, and it's really tough to wrestle with this because we all want to have some sense of, why we're here. Right, but here's my thinking along these lines, and I'm still thinking about it myself.
Yeah.
And that gets back to this idea that I'm flawed and imperfect in my thinking. So I was very open about how I have certain beliefs. Like, I don't necessarily believe in like the man on the cloud type God, but I do believe that there's some coincidences that are they just seem too good. Like the fact that doing good things to other people, doing good things for people, just makes us feel so good that just seems like such a coincidence that it makes me believe that there may be some kind of higher power that's good. But I was very open about how challenging it is to really have conviction in a lot of these ideas. And I was also very open about how a lot of her friends are going to be believing a lot of different things, and so she has to be careful about how she communicates it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
we probably
also-
sat down and had an impromptu, like 3-hour-long conversation where I'm just trying to help you understand all the nuance about that.
Yeah. Also about like radical transparency. Well, like I remember when I like you. I don't actually remember this, but you told me like when I was little. I was like, I know everything, and then you were like,
I felt that way when I was 5 too.
and then you're just like, no, you don't, and then I was like, but I was like, no, I know everything, and then you were like, mommy and daddy don't even know everything, and then,
So somebody mentioned that people ask these questions their whole lives. That's true.
Yeah.
But when your 5, 6, 7-year-old kid comes up to you and says like, "What is God?"
Mhm.
Then it just feels like, at least when I've observed some of this happen, which not a lot, right? Maybe a few times, but there tends to be this level of like, you're too young, so I'm going to give you this overly simplified and often just inaccurate answer, basically just because I think you can't handle the truth.
Mhm. And one part of my article is that like
There's a few
kids
examples.
are
Let me pull it
tough.
up.
Kids are tough because like one thing is that like with adults they've had like more time to develop like certain like core things about them, like these are like a certain like core values about themselves, and if and so if something like questions that, that'll be a lot of like, then it'll
be more hurtful to
it'll
them.
be more hurtful to them,
Because
whereas with kids it's not
Kids,
really as
it's like they just started.
Mhm.
They don't have any junk to carry around.
All right, here, yeah, I like this. Oh, and we have a picture of Isla working out in the basement in the article talking about kids are tough. So let me just read a little bit of what Sume wrote. Another reason that grown-ups I interviewed lie to kids is to protect them. I instinctively avoid talking to friends about Santa. I don't want to be the one to break the news, but I'm less worried about it now because I think kids are pretty tough. When I say kids are tough, I mean we can handle things. Truth hurts sometimes, but like trees, the exposure helps us to develop thick skin, so when we go out in the real world, we won't be squashed like a bug. I really like that. It was kind of this testament to how kids are viewed as fragile, and so I think that's part of the reason why grown-ups avoid telling them about the harsh realities and challenges and difficulties. So so if like mommy and I have a disagreement about something, especially if it's about like what to do with you kids.
Yeah.
And we care about you kids like more than anything in the world, right? So it can be tough when we have two different views on that. It can be tough, and so you can hear it in the tone of voice.
Yeah.
But we don't like go down in the basement and hide all the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, because I think we want you to, when you see the complexity, when we see the challenge
Unless
of it.
we are in the basement.
Right. That's true.
Then you can come down into the basement.
That's right.
But also
Yeah.
the basement's kind of cool.
So I think I get.
So why do parents start to do these things? When I grew up, there is no hiding of anything. I see how harsh the reality
You
is.
saw everything. Oh,
I
yeah.
saw everything. I saw,
Your daycare was in a factory with broken glass on the floor.
Yeah. So my parents never worried about needing to protect me from certain thoughts or certain conversations, right? They just.
I don't know. I mean,
I think this is also like, here it's a more developed, kind of evolving situation. Like what we think is best for raising children, it evolves over time. It also is related to the historical background.
I think for for parents trying to hide like their arguments, I think there might be certain like things like if they are fighting a lot with their kids, they might think then the kids will think that it's okay to like start arguments with everybody, or if they do, then like if the parents want to like appear to their children as just like this one one voice, like even though they do like
Oh,
they
yeah.
will have contrasting
One
opinions
voice.
sometimes.
But that's a really good example of a lie. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're a 5-year-old kid, wait, 1 second. I this point, I just want to make this point. So if you're a 5-year-old kid, and all the way up until you're 13, and every single time that your parents ever told you anything about what the rules were, about how good you did on your report, their reaction to your report cards, when they talked to you about the friends that you're making, all these things. If every single time that they did that, it was some rehearsed, they walk out, the two of them, to two podiums, arms interlocked, and then they repeat in unison everything that you're hearing about how they think as parents, that's a lie. It's a complete facade. The reality is that parenting is really complicated. It's really hard, and there's all these nuances. And you can't know for sure if you did right even after the kids grow up. Maybe they just survived you. And if they did well, maybe it had nothing to do with you, right? So, the truth would be, your mom and I don't know for sure, but here's what we're going to do for now. We're going to see how this works. There was a compromise. I actually thought we should do it this way. She thought we should do it that way. And we're kind of going to settle on this for now, see how it goes. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm. And then also, the kid could like say their opinion of if a mom.
What do you think?
Yeah, like if two parents like disagree about like a parenting thing, then the kid could just say, well, I would like this way better. And it's like, it is parenting.
All right. Yeah, I
so.
want to hear what Mama was going to say.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just getting excited.
I'm just curious, why did an expert recommend you have, the same voice in front of children?
There's an
right?
expert that recommends? I'm sure there is one.
Yeah, because that's also like experts, recommend you're always going to be positive about, school or
That's another really good one.
life situations.
Thank you.
I mean, I didn't grow up this way because this is kind of a thing that my parents would never have time to think about. They'll spend time surviving, and I just see it, clearly.
Your parents are true heroes.
Well, but I think it's actually an improvement in the sense that parents have more time to think about how to best parent kids. For thousands of years, you just made kids and they just survived, and you never really were trained to be parents, right?
Like 5% of kids had some kind of alcohol overdose issue because they were putting alcohol in the water because there was no other way to disinfect it.
Mm-hmm.
So can you imagine that? Throughout history, something like 5 to 10% of adults had some kind of alcohol poisoning at some point while they were children, all the way up until the 20s.
Because here
so
we have
bad.
we have strict rules of what the kids can do. But we also have a lot of soft rules here, and it's a lot of rules are based on scientific research, right? These experts' recommendations were, based on a lot of research that people did. For me, I'm curious because it's really hard to know there is the best way, because it also depends on the children.
And I also think with experts putting out certain ways to parent,
Mm-hmm.
also I think you also have to think about what about your kid, because every single kid's gonna be different, and so it's not that every single one is just the same. It's not a factory, it's a home, and you're trying to just raise somebody.
That was good. It's not a factory. It's a home, yo.
And it's and so every single kid's gonna be different. So I don't think that an expert can say that this will work for every single kid.
So I'm so itching to tell the report card story.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to tell it?
Okay, sure.
This is a good one.
So, both my parents are economists, and so I got a 3 in economics, and the highest one you can get is a 4. And then when my dad saw that, he just ripped my report card in half. He just they don't know you.
Okay, so you have to understand the back story. Sume is written multi-page, multi-lesson classes for makeshift homeschool and economics. She, impromptu, she could give an hour-long lecture about Econ 101, the basics of how companies create value, inflation, how profits, revenue minus cost, all this stuff, right? So she knows this stuff.
Finance and investing.
Yeah, that too. But this was just economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she gets all 4s on her report card. This is also during the This is right before the lockdown?
Yeah.
Okay, this is before the lockdown, right before. And I was already starting to have some concerns about public education, and are my kids getting a really quality education? I didn't really know, because unlike now where I'm living with them and I'm seeing it, right? I'm part of that educational process in a way that I never was before, not to the extent that I was before. Then what did I really have? I just assumed that a lot of the quality of the teaching was way up there and that they were getting the best they could. But one of the things that I thought I was getting was the signal. I wanted to get a good signal from school about, do my kids know certain subjects? So Sume gets nothing but perfect scores on the entire report card, except for economics, where she got a 3. And I read this, and it is so obviously not a reflection of reality that I tore it in half and walked out of the room laughing.
But think about
and Sume was just
But it mostly is.
But I was being really radically honest about how I felt. And maybe I'm wrong, but at least she knew how I felt about it.
Sure. I was thinking it's if we really dig deeper, it's how we measure the achievement, right? And actually, it's like very complicated, and we come up simple ways to measure something, right? Like I think about, say you have a doctorate in economics, do you really can forecast what's going on in the economy better than the majority of people who don't have a PhD? You might do much worse than the rest of the world as a group. So, like even though I agree with you with the school report card on Sume's economics understanding, but in general, we have, we try to measure and systemizing the measurement of a lot of things.
Of course. We're trying to create insights into what kids know and what they don't know.
And it's actually very dynamic and needs to be updated.
But man, is it hard. You have one, and it's not the teacher's fault. I think part of it is just the challenge of how it's set up, where you have one teacher watching 30 kids, and then they have to assign a number to like 20 different subjects. It's like hundreds and hundreds, thousands of estimates of how much kids know.
Yeah, they probably don't like.
That's an impossible job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I don't really know, but I think, I don't know, if I was a teacher and I was watching 30 kids and then I have this like blank report card that I'm supposed to fill in.
I'm gonna need more coffee because I'm getting more ideas.
I mean,
and you have to teach certain subjects, cover certain topics to meet the standards, right?
Yeah, and I think then I just think that the teacher's probably just gonna go back to like the tests, because like what else, they can't really get to know the kid, because there are 30 and there's only one teacher, and so I think like also the people who aren't very good at taking tests, then they don't, like, they have to either like prove to the teacher some other way that they know the subject, or
get better at taking tests.
Yeah, or get bad grades.
Or get bad grades. But this is like, so we had these really we've been having open discussions with our kids about school, ways that it can be improved, things that we like about school. And so, when the kids were interviewed by GoGuardian, this company that provides tech services for like thousands of schools across the country. Kids were on this podcast 5 months ago. They had these very articulate views about what they like about school, what they don't like about school, areas that they feel can be improved, what they're trying to build to do that. Well, young people can't have these nuanced views about school if every time a child complains about a subject or some project that they have, that the parents feel like they could never say anything negative about school out of fear that if they do, then their kid will think that school is BS, and all of a sudden they've got like a child delinquent, that's like, I'm too good for school. There's like, that's another one of these lies where it seems like I have yet to meet a parent that will be so honest if their kid brings up what was this? You were drawing moons?
Yeah,
what was
this? I had to memorize all the moon phases and then draw out a moon chart.
I'm gonna have to do that soon.
Yeah. Oh no, you're not. No, you're not. You're gonna do exactly what I told Sume. I was like,
Google
moon
pictures.
I
just like, we were supposed to record all what the.
All right, Mommy's not coming. Let's hear Mommy.
I have a comment. I think
go for it.
Now I have a different way of looking at it.
All right, go.
Because a lot of recommendations is to address one type of parents, one type of children, and in one typical situations, right? You recommend parents never, always speak positively about school, and that recommendation would work for. I hopefully the research was showing it will help the majority of people if they do that.
Right.
Depends on the children, depends on the parents, right? But these recommendations, when it actually comes to the individual kids, individual family, it always is off, right? these recommendations
Nothing's
addressed
going to work
the,
perfectly.
yeah, it's like the school curriculum that's addressed, supposed to target the media student, right? It's never, but it's always all for every kid, because some kids are way ahead, some kids need a little bit more help, and it's never, but they're trying to say, in the whole, this recommendation would work, gets the most benefit for the whole of the whole population. So I think, and these are actually the nuanced, decision making or information that should be delivered, should be.
Well, and we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
We don't want our kids to think that, like, there aren't very reasonable, intelligent people doing their best to try to come up with a curriculum that is going to best prepare them for the future.
Yeah.
Because that's the truth.
To best prepare most children for the future,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean it's going to work for you, because they're different.
And even if like they were thinking, oh, maybe like schools should improve on this and we should do this change, it would have to be like a nationwide change that, and since this is just how schooling's been, it's not like a lot of parents are going to be like, no, I like the way schools are doing it right now. I don't like how we're doing all these changes. And so if like
Yeah, some parents will like it, some parents will not like it, because every family situation is different. So you see how kind of complicated and challenging it is to,
So let's. Sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off.
to like, what is a better way to do this, for most of people, right? That can be really difficult and challenging. But to say for you kids, as your parents, we kind of, see a lot of ways that we can improve your education experience.
But it was nerve wracking though. Like, it's not so just let's just take this one example and really just illustrate bare bones just how much of a radically different approach this has on a child between how you react to them, complaining about a school project like this where Sume's drawing pictures of the moon. Or you had another one here. She was like 6th grade AAP. Like, one of the first things that she had to do in school was like fill in using, watercolors or something, like coloring a picture of a map. It's like I just said label the colors. You don't need to be coloring maps.
it would
You're good.
take me like an extra 2 hours to, and I'm not supposed to use markers because
Can't use markers because that would be
messy.
easier.
Yeah, and I had to use colored pencils to fill out like a
But
giant
you didn't,
map.
because I said, no, don't waste your time.
Yeah.
So, but here's the difference, right? It's like, on the one hand, I could lie to her and say, no, it's important that you do this project. And you just don't understand why it's important that you draw these moons and do colored pencils when you're in 6th grade AAP, right? Building a software company, but but no, you can't do that right now. You need to color pencil. You need practice with that. It's a core skill.
Yeah.
It's like, so there's that. Well, let me finish the point. So there's that way, which is not honest, right? Or you can be radically honest with your kids and say, you know what, you're right. Or wait, let me finish the point.
Okay.
So this is probably not the best use of your time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that the school is screwing everything up. That doesn't mean that there aren't, smart, intelligent, good-natured, well-intentioned people trying to come up with the best curriculum. But at the same time, let's use this as an opportunity for you to see pain points in the world and start to develop an entrepreneurial mindset where you see pain points and you think, well, how could we address that to try to improve it in the future, and be a part of a solution where you're actually solving real problems through makeshifthomeschool.app. So that's the difference between lying to young people by basically shielding them from what you fear is too much complexity for them to handle, and being so honest with them that they are getting the best data they possibly can on the nature of the world that they live in. And that to me was why I printed off this article that's got like, there's some profanity in it, like there's some tough stuff in there, and I just printed it off and I just handed it to her and said, write your reactions to that. Because that's the kind of difference that I think this can drive such a huge difference in how they perceive the world when you're that honest all the time. All right, I'm done.
Yeah. Is it time to wrap up?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
Isla actually has her moon phase science.
Oh, really? Is it
study.
coming up?
It's right
Oh,
now.
boy.
Yeah.
And I think
Starts
you
in
know
second
you
grade.
understand how it works, the mechanisms or the just how it works, right? But to understand it, you don't have to draw the moons for 30 days.
Yeah, and you
every
don't have
day.
to memorize like, what's it called?
They
like
have
wax-
specific
Wax on,
names
wax
for-
off. I don't know. It was something like that.
Well, so now there's the street cred portion of this, and then we
Yeah.
can wrap this up. So,
Sure.
so when you first started school, so Sume did like a month of school this year before. We basically said, okay, Sume, you can decide after a month if you feel like you're getting more out of doing school your own way, then we'll do it that way. But when you first started school, how did you react to this frog project?
I first was not. I was like, I don't want to do.
What was the
this.
project?
The project was to make a bunch of paper frogs and then to do like an experiment on like which like on different sizes to do an experiment on like which one jumped the farthest.
So
And-
you were learning origami.
Yeah.
You were also learning. It was a hypothesis test
Mm-hmm.
on which size frog would jump the furthest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you conduct a scientific research?
Yeah.
And then you and
It
Isla
was
were
a
like down in the
great
basement
project.
making lots of extra frogs because you're having fun making them jump. And you made like a whole video to go with it that you weren't asked to do.
Yeah.
But your initial reaction was very negative.
Yeah.
All right.
And-
Why do
No,
I
we
need to
have
do
a whole family of
One of them
frogs.
is, like,
There's
so
Big
small.
Fat
It's a
Grandpa,
little
Big
baby
Fat
frog.
Grandma, Junior Joe,
okay.
Junior Joe, Junior
So-
Junior Joe.
So when Sume had this reaction to it, you know, I'm not, like, half the time I'm not just sitting there going, that's BS, you don't have to do that stuff, make sure homeschool, woo. Like, that's not what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
I came down pretty hard on you, and I was like, actually, this is a great project. You need to think more positively about this. And you did, like that. And a big reason why, I think, is that you know I'm not BSing you. Right? So if I'm calling out the
Yeah, 'cause
project
if
that
I-
is BS, then you know I have credibility at that point to say that no, you need to think differently. This is actually really important.
Yeah.
At least I like to think
Yeah.
that. I hope that's the case.
Yeah, I think if you were like, yeah, moon phases are really important,
I love
then
moons.
then I might be like,
Well,
Moons are so
I
bright.
would think that to understand these natural phenomena, to like okay, have an instinct explanation of how does the moon phases work.
I'm not against learning the moon
because
phases.
I think
Yeah,
that's
but
that's
like
a
coloring
curiosity.
it.
That's kind of something you're curious about. Oh, why does that?
and also memorizing the different names for all the
It was
moon phases.
who
Like,
here has ever needed to know the names of the phases of the moons?
Yeah,
Not me, except for that one test.
I can just imagine like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk being like, there was that one time early on in the company where if I didn't know the moon phases names,
I'd be in big trouble.
Tesla would have gone bankrupt. Just like, no.
That's not how it works.
yeah, but
Thank goodness I had learned to use those colored pencils when I was in high school, drawing,
Maps.
Yeah, like my understanding is that there's too much coloring at school instead of actually learning the material.
You wouldn't think this, but my wife, she's really into math. And sorry.
But then I'm also like, I think, I lacked the.
We'll edit that out. Actually, we will.
No, I lacked artistic education at when I grew up, right? So.
And
you
turned out great.
you didn't get a really artistic education when you were getting your education in China?
No.
What did they do?
Just teach you math and science, and
Was there a lot of drilling involved?
it's a lot of drilling.
Oh wow, interesting.
So I do think artistic, appreciation and creation is
but it's
important.
also
But how do you actually get that? Whether
If
you
you're
need
really-
to do coloring for your math homework.
if you're really interested,
Why not?
yeah, because like they do these color by number thingies where like you solve the math problem and then you have to like match it up with some color and then color it in.
Then
and
you
it's
match
kind of
it with the color?
And then
The
Sume,
colors
and then Sume was just pubbling me with the math questions,
and then
so-
I just colored it in really quickly, just like okay, what's
because
6
my
times
hand
7?
was already sore from all the other things. Just like boom, 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 boom. Then we got it done in like
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Oh, well, this is a long one.
Yeah.
Make your toes go!
What size is this again? Is it how?
It's 4XL.
That's tent.
4XL.
Yeah, that's the
This is
makeshift
the
homeschool tent we got,
4XL adult.
also known as the tent.
She looks like a flying squirrel when she's wandering around the house.
yeah, it's like a
pretty
robe.
great.
It's like a robe.
I'm a
This is short sleeves. This is short sleeves, but it looks like long sleeves.
Okay, let's say bye.
Okay.
Bye
Bye bye.
Thank you for coming to today's episode of
Growing
Growing Girls!
And
And
mom.
All right, bye.
Okay. Stop.
Crack it.